Why did you get fired? My parole officer wanted to make sure I actually had a job, so he went to my employer listed on my file to surprise visit me on the job. I did home wiring, so I worked at different job sites and rarely in the office. He called me to say he was going to charge me with a violation for lying to him about my whereabouts. This could have landed me back in prison for my remaining 10.5 years sentence. The owner of the company had to speak with him and vouch for me. My parole office didn't charge me, but the owner sure did fire me that day. Finding a job with a felony isn't an easy thing, and it wasn't long before my PO threatened to charge me with a violation if I didn't find a job soon. I was 19 and working as a janitor at a large self-storage facility, where most days were filled with sweeping and mopping endless hallways of flickering fluorescent light. And when someone went delinquent on their bill, after a 3-month grace period, I would be instructed to empty their unit and dump everything in the trash outside. Once or twice it was a person who died, but otherwise it was pretty common to see a room full of absolute junk that someone got tired of paying for. Banged up furniture, garbage bags of ratty clothing, stacks of old magazines. It was usually pretty hoarder-friendly stuff, and not that I'd want any of it, but the policy was I had to throw it into the dumpster outside no matter what it was. One day I get notified to empty out a unit, so I grab the bin, cut the lock, fling open the gate. The room is full of huge cardboard boxes stacked to the ceiling. I open one up out of curiosity, and it's full of brand new, unopened Gundam models. The entire room is full of them, dozens of boxes with dozens of models in each, and I'm talking the $50, $100 ones I saw for sale at my local comic shop every week. The manager would check up on me once or twice a day, and that morning he walked up and I showed him all of the brand new merchandise and said there has to be a better system than trashing all of this. He said rules are rules, something about insurance I didn't understand, and told me to throw them all away. So I went and I backed up one of the complimentary U-Haul style box trucks, picked a few models out for myself, and loaded it up the truck with the rest of it. On my lunch break I drove over to the Children's Resource Center that I'd volunteered at during high school. It's a place where any child, but usually poorer ones, would go after school for arts and crafts and activities to keep them busy until their parents got home. The people at the drop-off dock were so grateful. Before I even left they were handing them out to some extremely excited kids. Drove back to the self-storage place with enough time to eat a sandwich and smoke a cigarette before clocking back in. But that's not why I got fired. I got fired because the manager came to check on me that afternoon, and after a while of looking around, found me sitting cross-legged on the floor of the janitor closet with model parts spread all around me, happily assembling a sweet translucent Zaku model. I was so entranced I didn't even hear him come in. I just hear this long, drawn-out, exasperated sigh. I look up and he just says keys, and that was that. I spent the rest of the week assembling Zakus and Valkyries and lying to my parents about getting replaced with a Roomba. I worked full-time as a graphic designer, and my first full-time job was doing social media content for a startup company in my hometown. On a Friday about 8 months into my job, my boss emailed us all to say that we'll be starting in the new office on Monday. I was never told that we were moving, but it seemed like everyone else was. I also didn't have a full driver's license yet, and the town the new office was in was an hour commute away, so I would have to take public transit every day. Luckily I got some advice from my parents, and I told my boss that I couldn't feasibly commute to the office, but I still wanted to work for the company, so my boss terminated my position, and I got put on unemployment. 22 years ago. I technically got fired for sexual harassment. However, the reality was the big boss liked me and wanted to train and promote. The boss below him didn't like me. When he was away for a couple of weeks, I got called into the office and told I was fired for sexual harassment with a certain member of staff. My direct boss was shocked. I was shocked. This other person worked in our department. I'd been around them for a couple of hours on my first day as they showed me the computer, not really spoke since other than a hello on the way in. My direct boss apologized to me after the meeting, said she had no idea it was coming and had no idea what they were on about. There was only me and her in the office. The other 2 members of staff, including this guy, had their own office. We didn't have a need to go into each other's. It eventually came out he had been told to go along with it. BG boss was furious when he got back, but things had been done already. That person didn't progress any further in the company. I was a 16-year-old girl at the time, and the guy they strong-armed into it was a 28-ish-year-old man. It was awkward on so many levels. No big loss though, not for me. The person that arranged it all came off much worse. I was in my late 20s and had just gotten out of the army and wanted to finish school. I worked for a pet store as a groomer part-time while I was working on finishing up the semester. I put in time off for my finals week about 3 months back, and it was approved by both him and the assistant manager. Everyone in the entire store knew I was going to be focusing on school for that week. Jackass calls me in the middle of one of my finals and left me a voicemail saying I needed to come in cause they were one person short. I didn't even know until 45 minutes later when I walked out of class. He had called me 4 times, and on the 4th voicemail he left me a threatening voicemail. So I called him back and we argued about my professionalism. So I went into the store to have a conversation with him, which led to him threatening to fight me. I told him if he wanted to fight, then he can take off his name tag and meet me in the parking lot off company property. Suddenly he became really fucking docile and just told me I was fired. So I sent in the voicemails to corporate and found out a few weeks later he was transferred to a different store.